Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Autumn always feels like the season with the biggest color shifts. Everything turns from green and bright colors into warm light, earthy tones, muted colors, deep shadows, and yet also a lot of coldness and gray. In today's video, I'm creating my own mixed media autumn palette. One that feels personal but is also rooted in nature and ready to inspire my art in the coming weeks. I'll be swatching different materials, curating a final selection of colors, and painting a small piece using my finished palette. I want to show you how you can personalize your limited palette. Of course, you're welcome to use mine or get inspired by mine, but I also really want to talk about how you can curate a limited palette and make it your own. I'll show you the strategies I used to create this palette that is autumnal, personal to me, and also rooted in some color theory principles. If you're new here, I'm Nina, a self-taught artist living in Belgium, trying to build a slower, more creative life centered around art. I'm funding this little journey myself, so any support through likes, comments, shares, or subscribing really helps me keep creating and sharing with you. In this hemisphere, autumn is in full swing. There's always some sadness to see summer leave, but I try to remind myself of all the beautiful things autumn brings. The gorgeous leaves in all shades of red, orange, and yellow. The coziness of wrapping yourself in soft blankets, your favorite sweater, your winter socks, warming your hands on a cup of tea or mulled wine, candlelight, pumpkin spice, hearty soups, and melted cheese. At least in our household. As you know, I usually work with mixed media, and I'm always overwhelmed with all the materials and colors surrounding me when I sit down to paint. There's pencils, crayons, markers, watercolors, gouache, pastels, and everything in all the colors of the rainbow. I know many of you out there are the same. And that's why it can be great to select a limited palette and put everything else away. Surprisingly, it feels liberating. I guess it's because it takes the decision-making pressure off. So today, let's curate a limited palette based on autumn. Now, one thing's for sure, all autumn palettes need and have warm oranges, reds, and browns. Those hues are autumn. Now me, I love all earthy warm colors, so there's no question that these will be at the center of my autumn palette. And it would be tough painting anything autumnal without those colors. But the trickier part is, what do you pair them with? How do you complete your palette? One way to figure this out is to look at photos or paintings as inspiration. Now, I was already looking for some autumnal reference photos to paint from, and then I stumbled on one picture that really spoke to me in terms of color. It's a simple collection of autumn treasures spread across a table. Some leaves, seeds, acorns, and so on. But I really loved the balance of warm, typical autumn colors with those bluish or turquoise leaves. It felt autumnal but still fresh and unique. And it's a lovely combination of many of my favorite colors. So I took inspiration from that for my palette. Here you see me swatching different colors from different materials. I already had a rough idea now of what I was looking for. And so with each art material, I basically swatched all the potential candidates and tried to limit myself. I think it really helps to swatch them briefly, even if it's just on a flimsy piece of paper like the one I'm using. I need to see the actual colors next to each other. That way I can determine what works well together, what's maybe too intense, what's too similar to something I already have, and so on. For instance, I'm not going to pick all the reds, oranges, yellows, browns, and beiges that I have. That would be way too much. So instead, I go through them to pick the ones that I like the most, that fit autumn, and that will give me some variety. I make sure that I have some light, some medium, and some dark values. I also make sure to have a few vivid ones, but mostly I want muted, softer tones. Okay, so I imagine that we can all agree on those warm, earthy tones. Now let's discuss how to select everything else. When I come up with a limited palette, I always try to keep in mind what I want to paint. I know I will do natural landscapes, but probably also some cityscapes in autumn, also still lifes, and maybe also interiors, animals and people. Now you might think that this means that you need all the colors, but we don't have to depict everything in realistic hues. The most important thing, I think, is that I know I will need cold hues to complement the warm, earthy tones. Autumn is cold, it is foggy and grey, at least where I'm from. And that's why I've decided to go with some colors I rarely use in summer, cold greenish blues. In summer I prefer warm greens, greens with lots of yellow and orange in it, like olive for instance. And you could make this choice to do a fully warm autumn palette and combine your warm colors with warm greens and go with a very cozy vibe. But I want to go with something that offers more contrast, both in terms of color, but also conceptually. For instance, the contrast of the cold grey city with the warm orange leaves. And that's why I'm choosing some cold blues. I really like turquoise, but I usually don't use it much, because I feel it doesn't often go with my usual color palette. But for this autumn selection, I feel I can really embrace this favorite of mine. So I'm choosing some light turquoises, as well as some really deep dark ones. And again, I make sure I have a few bright, but also lots of muted ones. Now, in order for some hero colors to really pop in your painting, they need to be supported by the background dancers, let's say. And those are muted colors. I think that if every color in your artwork is strong, intense, brightly pigmented, then the result often looks imbalanced. Unless you're going for a pop art vibe, maybe. But I don't just want turquoises on the cold side. I'm also adding some warm blues, that is, blues that lean towards red. I don't like purple, so I'm not going too far in the reddish direction. But if you followed me here, you might have noticed that ultramarine is one of my favorite hues. So here I am again, also adding some materials in that area. So let me show you how my limited palette is distributed on the color wheel. I re-swatched all of the selected colors on a dedicated sketchbook page. Something I've gotten used to doing over the years is arranging my palettes in the same structure as the color wheel, so grouping hues together. But I also organize them by value, with the lightest values towards the center and the darkest around the edges. And I do that because it just gives me a much better sense of what I have. And sometimes it helps me notice if I've picked too many similar colors or if something's missing. Now, as you can see, my palette is very unevenly distributed. I don't have any greenish or super bright yellows. I also don't have any primary red or any reddish violets. And there at the bottom, I don't have any primary blue or secondary vivid green. But this uneven distribution is a good thing. It's actually what we're aiming for. This shows me that I did a good job in limiting the palette. If you swatch your palette and you find yourself with colors from all over the color wheel, well, I'm not saying that you have a bad selection, but you definitely don't have a limited color palette. And that means you can't take advantage of some of the color combination principles out there. Most color wheels show you some of these principles. If not, you can easily find them online. Personally, I'm not strict about them, but I like to let them guide me a little sometimes. The most obvious one that you've probably heard of is complementary colors. Those are colors on opposite sides of the color spectrum. And so these opposites make for beautiful combinations. But there's also something called the split complementary scheme, and my autumnal palette fits more into that principle. I would say that my hero color, my main color, is orange. If we made some kind of average of all the warm colors at the top, it would be orange. Or in other words, all the warm colors I selected are located around orange. And if we look at the color wheel, the complementary to orange is blue. But I didn't really pick a pure blue, especially not a medium value one. I just don't really like primary blue. Now, of course, you totally could pick this. It's one of those moments where it really comes down to your personal taste. And therefore, we see that instead I went for this split complementary. So rather than the primary blue, we have the two adjacent sections. We have some blue-greens or turquoises at the bottom right and some blue-violets at the bottom left. And all together, in my view, it looks harmonious and still interesting. So how can you personalize your own palette? I mean, obviously there's a million ways, but what I've shown you today combines two simple strategies. One, get inspired by an image, painting, or anything really, where the color combination really speaks to you, and try to analyze what you love about it exactly. Secondly, when selecting materials, start with a hero color, something at the center of what you're going for, like orange for autumn, and then pick one or maximum two other colors that work well with it. And after that, it's just a matter of adding lighter and darker versions of those hues, a few vivid ones and a few muted ones. But everything focuses around those main colors you've selected. If it helps, you can use the color wheel to help you find a good combination. But only pick colors you truly love. Don't let color theory force your hand. Like I've told you, the obvious combination with orange would be blue. But since I don't like it, I didn't choose it. And that's what I mean by that, like really go for colors that speak to you. Using this recipe, you can come up with different limited palettes for any season or project. And yes, I know it's hard to put colors aside. I always hear people say, I just can't limit myself. I love all the colors. I mean, you don't have to use a limited palette, but I really recommend giving it a try. I don't know what kind of witchcraft is at play in painting, but I've really been fascinated to learn and to experience time and time again how a limited palette can actually bring more harmony and interest than having every color at hand. Let me know in the comments if you'll give creating a limited palette a try, or if you decide to paint something using my autumnal palette. In case you share anything you create on Instagram, please tag me or send me a message, because I'd absolutely love seeing it. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. Please consider a like, comment, share, or subscribe. It's free for you and it really helps me to grow this channel. Thanks so much. I'll put on some music while I finish this painting, but let me already say goodbye. I hope to see you again next week. Stay cozy and creative and take care.